Welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast, a virtual firehouse kitchen table with Matt, Adam, Brian, Doug, and Freddy, where they discuss everything that matters in today's fire service. Now let's get to the show.
Let's go. Let's do it.
That's actually not a bad idea.
I thought we were going to FDIC too. No, we can do that.
Not a bad idea.
Jump down. All right, we're rolling. So, welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast. I'm Brian from East Coast Kelly's and the Cool Fireman Podcast. My special guest tonight, today, whenever, is Maria Bostian. She is a fire and life safety educator from Charlotte Fire Department. We're going to get to know all about her. And
you got me. Everybody knows me. Matt.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're watching the Cool Fireman Podcast, brought to you by Unky Seasoning and the Burn Box. And tonight, we are still in Leland, North Carolina. I don't know where we're going to play this, but either way, it's going to be sprinkled in. And so we're together here for a special episode. Got the beautiful Charlotte River behind us. I mean,
Pretty special.
Unbelievable.
absolutely unbelievable. Matt's blown away, right?
I am blown away. Yeah.
And so, again, special thanks to the hospitality of Chief Hayes in Leland. So depending on how these drop, if his episode is not dropped, depending on how we put him out there, you're going to want to watch his episode or go back and watch his episode as well. So special thanks to him and his family for their hospitality, both his physical family as well as his fire department family, for an amazing weekend so far. It's been pretty awesome.
Yes.
So, but again, on today's episode, we got Maria Bostian. I'm gonna give you a little props. So Maria and I have known each other for probably close to 2 decades now.
Probably.
I know she got
They're from another mother, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I base age based off of how old my kids are. So
This could really make me feel
what
old.
I was gonna say, my son is gonna be a junior this year, and I think he was in preschool. So that'll tell you something. So
It's been a minute.
yeah, almost 2 decades. And so, anyways, Maria has a strong background in education. I'm gonna let you speak to that here in just a second. But she probably won't mention this because she's very humble. But just a few years ago, she was named by NFPA as the Fire and Life Safety Educator of the Year for the whole country. And that's a huge recognition for her. It speaks volumes to her credibility about what she's going to talk about on the episode, but more so about the person that she is. And I think that is huge. So when you look at people that you can mentor yourself after or look up to, that's where it is. So a lot of times when I have questions about what to do or how to do it, I'm going to bounce it off of Maria. She is one in the national platform that, in that space that people bounce it off of and have ideas. She does work in the Vision 2020 arena, and we're going to talk about what that is and what the purpose of that is, and kind of what the scope means for how that encompasses outside of the fire marshal's office. So many people, it's a us, them. We were talking about that before the show started, but it's really not. It's all encompassing. We've mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast. From the fire marshal's office, we're not the people that folks look up to. When the trucks are driving down the road, the little 5-year-old looks up to the firefighter in the truck.
Sure.
Okay.
So they are the people that they look to for the answers, right? The educator comes in and gives the tools and gives the information, but really we need to make sure that we're empowering the firefighters to have the correct answer. One of the big initiatives that we've had for the Fire Marshals Association was residential sprinklers. And if our firefighters don't have a true understanding of how they truly work, what the different types of them are, and I'll put a pin in that and say that's conversation for another episode, then how can we advocate for them if we don't have a true understanding? So having said all that, Maria, tell us about what got you into fire and life safety education and kind of what your career roadmap has been up to this point.
Oh, wow. So I was a Montessori teacher. I had 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and I thought that was fabulous. I thought this was the bomb because I can teach all these different kids, and they're helping me teach others. And everything happens for a reason. My mom had a meeting with a gentleman from the fire department. He wanted to buy land for a fire department. She just wanted somebody there. And it happened to be a gentleman we had grown up in church with. And he asked me what I was doing because I'd just come home from work. And I said, I'm a teacher. And he said, great. Want to come to the fire department? We need a teacher. I'm like, why do you need a teacher at the fire department? And he said, well, we've got one leaving. They had two. Concord, at the time, was Concord Fire and Life Safety. And the chief was very forward-thinking about risk reduction. They were kind of ahead of their time. Okay. And they already had two educators. And I won't tell you how long ago that was. But they already had two educators, and one was leaving. And so through process, I went through the process like anybody else, and finally got hired as a fire and life safety educator, public information officer. And so that was...
What about up till now? You've done public information, write media releases on calls, that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about
different things. So in my role at Charlotte Fire Department, I'm actually one of four. We're the largest group of fire and life safety educators in North Carolina. We primarily do education, third grade, middle school, high school, older adult, fire extinguisher, things like that. We are in the same department with our public information officers. So we can assist with giving correct messaging for blog posts or whatever. Just recently did a magazine article that'll be out in October. Had a local magazine reach out to us. Was able to do that. So with this fire and life safety educator community risk reduction thing, it can be anything from social media, blogging, public speaking, school-based curriculum. It's the gamut.
Yeah.
So it can even be educating firefighters. You mentioned operations personnel. I'm in our Citizens Academy right now, and I'm literally doing the truck visits with all the other people, and I'm raising my hand and asking questions and kind of trying to bridge that gap. Like they know what their truck, but then I might ask, well, why do you do that? Or how has that changed or whatever? And that gives them a whole new perspective on what they can talk about. Or I can ask the questions like, well, how much money would that cost? And taxpayer dollars and things like that.
And just for the folks that are listening or maybe watching, just for clarity, you're asking those questions to make sure that the citizen has clarity from the firefighter perspective.
Right.
Because the one thing, and you and I have been doing public education for a really long time, the reason why that's important is because firefighters know technical jargon, and we struggle to apply it in a way that people understand. I'm going to pick on Matt here for a second. On our way back home, we were talking about classes, and man, he rattled off some paramedic jargon that I was like, and I've been firefighter for a long time, and I was like, pew, it went right over my head, and I didn't even stop him. I was just like, whatever he just said, and I was like, whatever. But that's what we are. And so in the middle of that station tour or that truck visit, we'll look at a kid and we're like, so we'll wear this SCBA, right? And so what does that mean? They don't know.
This tank of air that'll last about 25 to 35 minutes, depending on how heavy I'm breathing.
And even something as simple as that, of saying this tank of air that's as long as your cartoon that you watch on TV, right?
Because
little terminology.
The bad air also, we can't breathe it. You don't need to breathe it.
Those little terminologies, those little tidbits that are going to help people be better at their job. So anyway, that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother way of doing that.
Oh, good. It looks like we're coming back.
Well, and just in general about how things help, because that's the frustrating part for the most firefighters of why they don't enjoy doing it, because they get frustrated. They see those kids sitting there and they're like, man, those kids just look at us, they stare, they're picking their nose. We don't mind the kids, right? We got kids at home. It's not that we don't want them to do it. It's just, that's not our thing, right? Like, we should be out fighting fire or training to fight fire. Like, that's what we're here for. And again, I go back and say, yeah, but the people that you want to do it aren't the ones that they look up to.
Right.
It's you, right? I'm pointing at Matt, but he's the station guy, right?
Yeah.
And so what if I empower you to be the hero that you're expected to be, right? Like, that's kind of my thought process. And that's, I feel like that's a good segue into what CRR is. And part of the reason why I wanted to do that was because I had a big, my wife uses these aha moments, right? Mm-hmm. That's the buzzword in education. I won't get her to listen to the podcast, but I'll tell her, she was mentioned in this one. She's been a teacher for a really... Yeah, she's been a teacher.
You live with this guy. Yeah.
She's been a teacher for a really long time. And I was sitting down doing a community risk assessment, a CRA, with my crews, and I had all my reports, and I had my ones and zeros and all my data and everything. We were sitting at
fire station number 1, and we were going through it, and I was like, all right, here's your call volume, here's the numbers, we're excluding EMS, right? We're looking at this, and here's the fire-based problem in our community. And I mean, you guys run a lot of illegal burns and everything. And so we're sitting around, we're going around, and the guy that I taught firefighter 1 and 2 years ago says, Chief, that's really true, but I think it's a waste of time. We live in such a transit community. We're going to constantly have to be re-educating people on these things. He said, but those are things that matter but don't matter, right? Like an illegal burn, that's just somebody mad because somebody's burning leaves. He said, I tell you what I'm tired of. I'm tired of going to pedestrians being struck and killed by cars.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, wow. I was like, that's not even on the chart here. And he's like, but you know what? Every time I drive past that intersection, I think about that wreck. Every time I close my eyes, I think about that wreck.
Sure.
And so every time I think about that, I think about the dad who's not going home. Or, the grandma who was just trying to go across the street and get some milk. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fair enough.
Right.
And it didn't reach enough on the bar graph to matter. Does that make sense? But it mattered to him.
It mattered to your guy.
It mattered to my lieutenant.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I needed to shut up and listen. We talked about that day in class, right? Sometimes as the supervisors, we need to shut up and listen. But it also goes back to empowering people. So why don't we talk about real quickly, or can you give us some tips about what CRR is and how at the station level, it's not about somebody at headquarters who rides around in a car in the pub ed division, right? It is truly about that station level, knowing their district.
So if you think about, we've heard that term like holistic medicine, that trying to treat the whole body, not just like one specific problem. Mm-hmm. So CRR is basically the holistic approach to fire and life safety education and public safety. So if you go on, CRR week will be in January. So the Vision 2020 has a CRR week. And one of the things I like about it is it's really not to educate the community on what CRR is. It's to educate us in public safety. And so each day is if you think about it, a different cog in the wheel that gets highlighted. And so it could be looking at your data, and it could be handling the illegal burns. For a lot of us, it's older adult falls. It's whatever that your data or whatever your personnel sees as the highest risk and going for that high risk. In talking to our firefighters, what are they seeing the most of out in the community? Maybe it might even be something like that the data just doesn't show, because sometimes there's not great data.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's finding those things that need to be addressed, and then everybody addressing them. It could be like, for example, so I know this sounds crazy, but like you may think that, I know I just cut him off, right?
No, you're good. Go ahead. Perfect.
So, like you may think
I love it.
that like someone having a heart attack in the community, that's strictly operations or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's not community risk reduction. Well, that actually is, depending on how you look at it. So let's say you've identified, like many of our departments have, you identify high risk of heart attacks as an issue. Now you change the way you do your operations. You add more people. You have that pit crew mentality. You have that person counting, so you would constantly switch positions so your firefighters aren't fatigued. Yeah. You guys don't always know you're doing community risk reduction, but that is at the core of what community risk reduction is. It's finding a different way or a better way to mitigate a problem.
I was going to say, one of the biggest lessons I learned from my mentors in CRR, as far as the guy that's accountable for it in my organization, was going to some of the conferences, listening to people like Chief Blackley, who's really good. Was one of the things that he told me was sometimes some of the problems that we respond to are not our problem to fix as much as it is to identify, right? So in your community, let's say you have an area that slows your response time. The fire department can't fix the road, right? But you get a cardiac call as the station captain. You go, hey, Chief Kelly, the response times in this area, like we have the worst time. Like there are potholes everywhere, right? Like it is terrible. It's beating our truck to death. It's making us go through tires. We got a high call volume. Like we got overdoses. So they're cardiac calls, they're CPR calls, but we just can't get back there. And I'm gonna pick up the phone or I'm going to send an email to streets or someone else.
Right.
But if I don't know that that's happening, we were talking about it on the way down, Matt, talking about the data guy, right? And how you had just got back off of a call and was working on homeless data, right? And sometimes it's not even something that's trackable.
Right.
It's just conversational.
The unhoused, that's so hard to track.
Right. And so even then, like I said, that data about the road, that's not in some fire report somewhere. That's literally...
There's no button, there's no drop-down box for that.
Right.
None.
But it is a problem that we're the fixers, right? The fire departments are known as the fixers. And so in my mind, it's about fixing that. So how do we go about fixing that stuff? Let's talk about that. How would you suggest somebody who starts that conversation outside of, hey, someone else, let's do this. So talk them through maybe coalitions and collaborations and stuff like that.
So you got to know just a little bit about what community risk reduction is. And Vision 2020 is a terrific resource for that. Not only does Vision 2020 have a lot of guidance on how to do a good community risk assessment, that CRA that you talked about, there's also CRR Academy, which is some free online training that one could do, because you kind of need to educate yourself before you go out there and start educating others. And then you just want, like you said, building a coalition or a group of people from your community that can address these problems. Safe Kids. Safe Kids is one of the leading safety coalitions out there for injury prevention.
Plug and play framework.
And just a wide network. So half the people you probably already need are involved in your local Safe Kids coalition in some way. Another thing that I think that we do a good job of wrapping ourselves around and getting good support is youth fire setting prevention and intervention. A lot of police department, your DA's office, juvenile justice, mental health, all fire service, all those things, sheriff's office come together. So those would be, I would look for in my own community, I would look for coalitions like that, and I would figure out how they're working really well, and then I'd see who I needed to pick and pull to solve what issue I was trying to cover.
The why, we spent a lot of time today in class talking about the why, right? And in my mind, the why of this, for the station captain who's listening to this and like, not my problem, right? Like, I don't need to worry about this. A lot of captains now are also the type, or the folks who are saying, I need to spend more time training my people. I need to worry about succession plan. I need to worry about the person who I need to be right seat ready. Well, again, if you can clear yourself up on these calls and not go to some of these calls that, quite bluntly, I don't want to say don't matter. They do matter, right? But if you can prevent those calls that are not the calls, the low severity calls, then it opens up for all those other things. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I am the station captain guy that you're talking to be honest with you. And so my attitude towards that type of subject, I mean, we try to be proactive in the field. I mean, so for myself, I've noticed that in the city of Laguna Beach, we've seen a lot of electronic bikes. So we call them e-bikes, right? And these kids are flying through town on these bikes. And so we're driving the fire engine through, and most of them don't even have their helmets clipped. We've run on calls where these kids have gotten hit by vehicles, and their helmets did absolutely nothing because it flies off before they hit, and now they become a trauma. And so obviously education on scene to that child or adolescent is critical, but also educating their parents at the same time is, hey, I have your child here. They're okay. This is what happened. But I actually had the opportunity to help a senior a few years ago in high school. She was trying to finish a project for college even in her senior year in high school. And
Wow.
she was very,
That's impressive.
Yes, it was very, very impressive. And so I ended up having the opportunity to help her. And what she wanted to do was teach CPR to the seniors in her health class. And she asked us if we would help her. And I said, yeah, no problem. And so, but in that, I took that opportunity to do and I didn't even, like what you said, that sometimes we do things in the field that we don't even realize might be CRR. And I actually sat in front of, and after we taught them how to pound on somebody's chest, I said at the end, I said, hey, listen, I'm here. I might as well take the moment to do a little PSA for you kids. I said, all you guys live in town, and we see you guys whipping around on these e-bikes with your helmets, this, that, and the other, and just like give a little bit of education. Like, at least please clip that sucker. You guys are going 35 miles an hour, and whether you slide out or you get hit by a vehicle, like, it's dangerous, and you guys could die. I've seen calls, I've been on calls of normal road bikes where a guy went over the handlebars, just hit something in the road. We got there, he was oriented, talking to us, a little bit of repetitive questioning. 30 minutes later, he was dead. So it's a serious thing.
Right.
So what I guess the point of my rant here is that as a station company captain or on an engine, we do recognize what we're doing a lot. In our city, we run a lot of single activation fire alarms, a lot of false alarms. So now that we have a fire marshal, I told you this has been a few years in the making that we've had a fire marshal. We're actually starting to punt that off to them and try to figure out what's going on. We're starting to put businesses on fire watch more often than we ever have.
Yeah.
And we're trying to be proactive because people's lives are at stake. And if a fire alarm system is not operational, that's a huge issue.
Right.
You know, like the small chance that something does happen, like that could be catastrophic. And so I like what you said about, you know, where we're out there, we're doing things. Yes. Are we training? Are we getting ready people for, you know, for new positions? There's a ton of stuff that we're doing. Logging training. I mean, we still got to eat. We still got to sleep at night. You know what I mean? Like, but at the end of the day, at least in our department, I'm proud to say that, you know, we're pretty proactive about, you know, figure out issues. And I told you about Be Well. So we have a nonprofit organization that our city has done, has contract through now. And they have tons of resources that are funded by, don't want to give out false information here, whether it's the county, it's not the city, whether it's the county or the state. And if there's a unhoused or a homeless person that we're running on constantly, we say, hey, what's the deal? Like, what's going on, right? Do you have an alcohol issue? Is it drugs? Do you just need a place to go? Do you need a person to talk to? What is it? And so we'll call Be Well out, and they'll come out and they have tons of resources. They'll take them right in the van and go and take them straight to that resource. And so I was telling Brian a little bit earlier today that we have, you know, a pretty significant issue with transients. And our police department has employed 2 resource officers that are strictly, I mean, that's their job, is to handle the unhoused. We don't have that in the fire department, but we can call on them, and we can also call on Be Well now to enact, you know, or activate resources for these people so that they're just not like, it's just a revolving door for these people. They go, they get 2 hots and a cot real quick, and then they get kicked out in 30 minutes to an hour, and they're back on in the same, pardon my French, shit that they were before we started. Yeah. And so that's like the disheartening thing, where you run on these types of people, and it's, I don't know where we're talking about transients, but I kind of got into it, but is just that revolving door. It's like, how do I help these people? So yes, is that a CLR? Absolutely. I think now that we've been talking that is like our own internal kind of CRR that we've been doing.
Well, I think you say in the police department had 2 people designated that. That's a form of CRR right there, because it's community risk reduction. It's not fire service.
Right, sure.
It's a community. So that is your local law enforcement making a conscious effort to make a positive change. Yeah. It's funny how I think in a lot of places the unhoused is becoming more prevalent. The issue is becoming more prevalent.
Community paramedicine. I'll give another example.
Hold on, buddy. Slow your roll. No, I was just at the National Fire Academy, and we were doing a class, and the gentleman sitting beside me was from Oregon, and he's community paramedic, but his focus is on the unhoused, and he's like, never in my fire service career did I ever think that the day would come where I'm going to the store deliberately buying cigarettes. And he was like, the cigarette, yeah, I know it's bad for the health, but is absolutely the most powerful tool I can use, because these people will sit with me and they will talk to me, and I will learn things about them. And some of that information that you're talking about, the why it is what it is,
sure,
he's getting that. And so his long-term goal as a community paramedicine is to then be able to help, you know, with the mental and the physical. Yeah. But he's getting the door just by driving up. They know he's got smokes, and they're, you know, they'll say, yep, I want one. And he's like, well, let's go right over here, spend 20 minutes with me on this bench. and let you smoke your cigarette. Let's talk. That's CRR in action right there.
I was just going to say, I was going to share I won't say a similar story, but community paramedicine showed me that it works. And it was through a very good friend of mine, a lady that was a paramedic for decades. She's now retired. But back home, she got into community paramedicine. She was very, very compassionate paramedic. And she got into a program, and she ended up going to Remembering When. You know, we did senior fall fire prevention. But the story that really hit home with me was she talked about how she would go to the senior citizen's house, and he was a widower, and he would call almost the same time every night. And you know, it didn't matter whether it was women or men or whatever. And you know, medics were like, he's just lonely. That's why he's calling, you know, but he does have some signs and symptoms of like low blood pressure or whatever. And so we take him to the hospital and whatever. And we like, or it'd be the opposite. Sometimes we'd go and his blood pressure would be high. And so she said that she went in there and she's like, hey, I got all your medicine taken out. You take 1 in the morning and 2 at night. You go, no. I take 2 in the morning and 1 at night. We had it backwards. And she finally clicked. Yeah, she said, Mr. Whatever, Mr. Smith.
How long have you been taking this medicine?
How long have you been taking your medicine this way? And he says, well, I went to the doctor, and that's what they told me. And she said, Mr. Smith, you know how to read?
Oh, my gosh.
I said, no, I don't.
Yeah.
My wife used to read for me. She put it in my pill bottle for him. And so ever since his wife had died, and he had no family, it wasn't that he was lonely. It wasn't that whatever. He couldn't read. And so her role was not to fix the problem, but to identify the problem and get him to the literacy council so that way they could fix the problem. Right? She's like, as a community paramedic, my job was not to fix this guy, tell him how to read. He just needed to know how to read to save his own life. Right?
If I like doing patient care, I'd make a great community paramedic.
Right.
Because I'm that person that loves to pull people together.
Right.
I just don't have to touch anybody, and that's probably
no blood, right?
But no, if you think about it, community paramedicine is on the forefront of community risk reduction.
Sure, 100%.
Like this person goes in, they notice this person's fallen, they need a ramp. They get in touch with their local, I don't know, religious organization or civic-minded organization that builds ramps for people. Or they see the smoke alarm dangling. They make a call to Brian Kelly in the fire marshal's office, who can come out here and install a new smoke alarm. I mean, that's what it's all about right there, is building relationships with other people. Yeah. And let's just get the problem fixed one way or another.
And I was going to say, that's what it's about. I wish that I had the resources in my own organization to go out and do smoke alarms, but I don't. Our staff is too stretched to be able to do that. And that's where a partnership with the Red Cross comes in for us. Sure. But CRR taught me that. I felt like it was my job. And then in reality, I'm mandated to certain things. So it goes back to the same thing with the station captain. They're mandated to prepare someone for that next promotion, for that right seat, to train and do all those other things. And so they're like, I don't have time for this, right?
We install smoke filters.
No doubt. And again, but there's some organizations who are like, and the ones who need, the organizations that need it the most are the most taxed. And I think that was my takeaway from this, is the agencies that need CRR the most are the ones that are most taxed, and think that they don't need it are the ones that need it the most.
And it's not always active participation in stuff. It may be passive. I have to put a plug in if I can.
Yeah.
At Surf City, North Carolina, their chief came and spoke at Vision 2020 Summit. I love Alan Wilson. So they saw a need. People from, landlocked states that had never really spent a lot of time at the coast would literally, and they said it tongue-in-cheek, but in theory it's kind of true, come and put their stuff in the sand, run right out into the ocean and drown. You know, and they're like, we're having so many drowning and ocean rescue calls. And they, they're not going to, you said yourself, like, or one of you said something about, I think you said it, about people moving in and out constantly.
Yeah,
well, these coastal towns,
it's every 7 days.
In the, fall and winter, and then it's 40,000 in the middle of the summer or whatever.
Yeah.
They're not going to educate those visitors. No. But what they did was they saw a need for their people were calling in, bystanders were calling in. They know where they were. They were on the beach. That's all they knew.
On the beach.
On the beach. And this guy's drowning.
Right.
Where are you? Yep, right here near this blue house.
Right.
you're looking Carolina Blue House, Seafoam Greenhouse, White House, Carolina Blue House, Coral Pink, Seafoam Blue. You're just seeing blue all across the water.
How do you respond to that?
Okay, so what they did was they started making signage. They have flags that identify each access point, and then there's also a giant board called 911. Say you're at beach access, whatever. Here's some basic first aid tips, and then they've got the little thing that you can throw. I'm not coastal, so I don't know what that is, but they implemented that in phases, and just within the last couple of months, they've been able to say they now have it at every beach access that they had, and they're seeing drastic reduction in numbers of, deaths.
Way that they do it.
Yeah,
I want to say,
that's kind of it was active, but it's kind of passive when you think about it. They're not out there at the moment it happens, but it's getting them there faster.
And I want to say this, with CRR, a couple of different things that I learned online, and I want to go back to the resources, and then we'll kind of close this out.
Sure.
Was Vision 2020, National Fire Academy has a CRR online class. Mike Weller has done a really good job of putting two. So you can do those online. Yeah. It's easy way if you're training hours or if you're in a hot or cold climate and you're like, hey, I really need to get some training hours. As an engine company, this is a great way to do it. It's online, it's free training, but more importantly, it's going to help you have some dialogue, so that way you'll have buy-in as a crew if you want to identify that in your community.
And those 3 classes, there's one from Vision 2020 and the 2 from NFA. They are basic prerequisites for a lot of the community risk reduction classes at the National Fire Academy. And it doesn't matter when you took them. Like, go ahead and get them out of the way, have your certificate in a folder or, somewhere that when you get time to take a CRR class, you're going to need to have those 3 documents. So,
and because of who's providing them, they're absolutely free. So it's not like you got to go to your chief and say, hey, can I go to this class? It's online, it's free. And so they're self-paced. You can take them when you have a few minutes and you can learn more about them. So speaking of that, I want to give you a chance to plug you. Maria would not share this. Again, she's very humble. Maria is also an author of children's book, right? So tell us just a little bit. Again, we want to wrap it up, but what are some of the children's books that you have written and what their purpose is?
Okay. So I write children's books in my free time. I needed a book. I needed something. In my former department, I had the true joy of teaching preschoolers, and I taught them different fire safety topics. And they were scaffold, meaning it kind of started with, here's the firefighter, and it kind of went on from there. And so I needed something for matches and lighters, and everything I was finding was corny, and it had the old, there was no modern lighter. It was, the book of matches. They're not seen very much anymore. And so I just wanted something a little different. And so I just wrote this little thing. And as I told this story in this class, people started asking more about the story. Where'd you get that? Why don't you bring the book next time? And I'm like, well, it's not a book. I wrote it. And so I just ended up, through talking with another children's author that was a friend of mine, kind of put myself out there and went to a conference and kind of got some good feedback on how to make it into a true manuscript, and it went on from there. But I have like 7 books. I think 6 of them are injury prevention related. That's kind of my thing. And I know that there's a big push in children's literature. You don't want it to be preachy, and you don't want to shove the message in a family or in a child's face. So I try to be subtle, and I always strive to use that back matter that's so important. It has the credible resources, the teaching tips, the checking the smoke alarm.
I was going to say.
Thomas Reaper, if you're out there, buddy, you're still in the back of, in the 2 pictures, in the back of Firefighter's Busy Day.
And what I was going to say, that's what I love, is at the end of the book, for the firefighters, there's literally all right, you got the book. You wouldn't read it in the classroom. Now, how do you teach this? And so from a nationally award-winning person, right?
Thank you.
Now what do I do with it, right? Like the saying goes, now what do I do with this, right? So it really helps you. But again, it's It's not cheesy. It's very, very helpful. So 6 or 7 of those. So
Well, the cool thing is that I don't write a children's book that doesn't go through the Kelly household. The Kelly household and the Raper household. He's a firefighter for our fire, I guess, inspector.
Yes.
From the Piedmont region.
So
Yeah, I get them vetted through some good sources.
And I was going to say, Natalie gives them a once-over with her master's in literacy. So we always, in the podcast with housekeeping, these are a little bit different. Usually we'll talk about things that are upcoming or whatever. And with this one dropping whenever, it's a little less of housekeeping. We just remind people that we're brought to you by Unky Seasoning and the Burn Box. But one of the things that we do, and I don't know if you've ever listened to any of our podcasts, probably not up to this point because this is kind of last minute thrown together. Hey, I need for you to come and be a guest. Is we do a moment of silence, and it is to honor anybody that we lost line of duty, either for the year or for the moment or the week or whatever. And so we just do that to pay homage. And so we're going to do that.
Sounds great.
All right, we'll do it.
Yeah.
All right, amen.
Well said.
Yes.
Yes. So cool podcast, right?
Yeah.
Cannot beat the background. I think we got a little bit of a washout.
Yeah,
we got a really bright sun there for a second, but it was worth it, right? Like to take it all in and just have this conversation here today.
Yeah.
And in this moment, and more importantly, around this friendship, I got some whiffs of a crab boil.
Yeah.
So my stomach was like,
Get
Ready for some shrimp, some local shrimp.
we're gonna have some crab.
Your lunch is finally digested.
Yes, it is. It is. I'm ready.
Happy for you for that.
Me too, right? I'm happy for me. I'm happy for me. You're happy for me. I'm happy.
I love that for you.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and what else? Am I missing something?
No, you're not. Roll it, Gigi.
Roll it, Gigi.
Before you leave, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and give these firemen a huge thumbs up. Also, make sure you check out thecoolfireman.com for more. Thanks!